Right, we're on.
Right, we are back.
Indeed, we are.
Josh, why have it taken so long to bring this back?
Skype is an absolute prick.
Well, aside from the problems you've had before recording this, what is the reason for us taking so long to bring this podcast back?
Um,
Other than the fact that we've got commitment issues.
both very lazy. That's the
That-
main reason.
I've also been spending a lot of time pretending to be a DJ as well. That probably doesn't help.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
I'm just very lazy.
anyway, for anyone who is listening, this is our fourth attempt at bringing this podcast back, I believe. But this time we are definitely sticking with it. Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Now, for real, we've been wanting to bring this back for a while. We just haven't got around to it, but here we are. We chat enough shit on our stories most of the time, so we figured it's probably best for us to get back to a podcast where we can just deliver more so of it. So yeah, it's going to be the same format as before still. So it's still going to be sort of 20 minutes, 30 minutes long, once a week, something like that, just covering like one topic in just quite a lot of detail, pretty much. We won't make it any longer than that because we know for a fact that people will get bored. And to be honest,
we'll get bored as well, to be honest.
Get bored. Not only that, but our attention span is absolutely woeful as well. So there's that to bear in mind. But yeah, for the first episode back then, we want to talk about the oversimplification of fat loss. And the reason we want to talk about this is because, well, basically we have just been moaning about how fat loss has just basically been oversimplified on social media. Just get used to the fact that any topic that we talk about, it's because we've been moaning about it in our DMs pretty much for the week leading up to it. So any topic that you see on this podcast, we've basically been triggered by it probably earlier in the week. Just bear that in mind. But yeah, basically, we feel like the fat loss process, is one of them things. I think when you look at fat loss across like social media and stuff like that, it pretty much just goes two ways. It's either completely oversimplified, which is obviously what we're going to talk about today, but then there's also other points where you just get absolute shithouses in this industry trying to make it overly complicated for the purpose of them making money out of you. But it's more so at the moment probably being more oversimplified than what it needs to be. We're currently in this generation where everyone's just like, oh, calorie deficit, which, is obviously, that's how the law of thermodynamics, can never say this goddamn word. Dynamics. Yeah, like you can't argue with that. If you want to lose weight, you do have to be in a deficit and stuff like that. But, the point of us kind of talking on this podcast really is that, we want to kind of talk about the fact that it's not quite as simple as that. There is a lot of other things that you need to consider, which is also what we're going to talk about today. So, and no doubt Josh is probably going to call out some people for talking about the oversimplification here, but
Well, the thing is, there's only one person I ever mentioned, but the thing is that everyone has tried to copy that exact kind of pattern with their own social media for the exact same, getting the exact same social media response of X amount of followers and X amount of customers in that sense. So that I think is actually the main thing, is that it's almost like there's a bandwagon that you now jump on where you have almost two camps of how to achieve, a decent fat loss goal, which is the calorie fucking deficit, and disregard for considerably a lot of factors. Sometimes not even disregard. Sometimes they don't even mention it. But I think by not mentioning something, you are disregarding it. You're not kind of giving some sort of disclaimer, especially to someone who may not be that educated. And then you have the second camp, which is the very very specific optimization of health, and both of them have their merits and qualities, and both do meet in the middle, and some deviate towards either end depending on the client. And I just think because fat loss is obviously the most marketable thing on social media for personal trainers, because it is what the general amount of population needs. If you look at obesity rates in the current population, like it's what we fucking need. Not everyone needs to build muscle. Most people need to lose fat. So more money is centered towards it. So everyone wants to have a very marketable, quick way that you can lose weight. And saying calorie fucking deficit over and over does tend to resonate. It's more catchy, I guess, than all the other things we can consider for fat loss goals that we do need to consider. I think that's kind of the issue. It does, and some people, they don't mean to do it. Some people do. it just gets lost in translation a little bit with some of the viewers, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And like, because in theory, in a lot of ways, like this whole notion of just people kind of rounding everything up to just being in a calorie deficit, like in a lot of ways, most people just need that anyway. Like they're spending too much time worrying about their certain carbohydrate intake, nutrient timing, all those kind of things. When in reality, they just kind of need to be brought back down to earth and just say, look, no, okay, this is really what's going to cause you to lose body fat. It's just being in a calorie deficit. So in a lot of ways, the way that that's kind of become popular has been good in a lot of ways because it's made sort of very normal, very, very beginner-like people just kind of suddenly realize what the main thing is here to kind of get.
I completely agree.
And it works really well for a while, but then I mean, as we all know as coaches as well, like we come across a lot of people who ultimately find it harder to lose body fat than others. Typically, obviously, females will obviously find it a lot harder to lose body fat for various different reasons because of their physiology. But then we've also got to look at loads of different factors. We've got to look at people's lifestyles. We've got to look at their sleep. We have to look at things like stress and stuff like that as well. Like there's a lot of other things that go off in people's life which can determine someone's ability to be able to lose body fat quickly, and that's just from a lifestyle perspective. That's not even looking at them like physically as well. So whole point of us wanting to jump on this really is to kind of really, in a sense, just like dive into the other areas that people need to kind of look at or care of, in a sense, if they really want to be able to lose fat as quickly and as safely as they possibly can.
Yeah, no, 100%. Again, it's just like we said before. It's very easy to get caught up in that oversimplification of just saying you just need to eat less, move more. Which again, I'll still use that as an answer if it's applicable. But again, depending on the client, there are so many of the variables you can actually think of. So, for example, let's say we're dealing with a general population client, so someone who, say they've never even set foot in a gym before. Let's assume they actually like training in gym. Let's assume they actually like lifting weights to start off with. First thing I'll always go for is aim is obviously calorie deficit. Yeah, blah blah blah. Look what their current diet is. So what exactly are you eating now on a regular basis? What kind of diet routine do you have, if any? And then we work from there. And know if you're actually conscious of it. The story I give of when I was in my old gym in Camden, I had a female client who was just north of 100 kilos and probably about 5'4". So you can imagine how large and probably how obese the girl was. Very unfit, very up for training though. And when we got to the stage of looking at food diaries, she was convinced she was eating about 1,000 calories a day. And so, if you go up to someone like that and go calorie fucking deficit, you're not going to get the exact response, because there's either some sort of awareness or some sort of relationship with food issues, which we will probably talk about later, because that's something which isn't talked about at all when it comes to dieting. So it isn't always as simple as going to someone who is overweight or 30-40% body fat and saying calorie fucking deficit, because they've got there for a reason. 3 words are not going to get them out of it just because it looks good on Instagram for you with a picture of you looking ripped at the beach.
Exactly that. There's several different areas that we kind of need to dive into and stuff really. So I think the best thing for us really is just kind of dive into each one and kind of like talk about it as best we can. So I think first and foremost, I think that the biggest thing is lifestyle for a lot of people. And that's quite a broad umbrella term in a sense. But what I mean by that in a sense is how best would you be able to like kind of like adhere to a diet? Would you prefer to just diet with the same calories seven days in a row, or would you rather have less calories in the week, more at the weekends to give you a little bit more freedom? Do you need more of like a diet plan type kind of thing to keep you on track, or do you need more flexibility for whatever purpose that may be? These are genuine things, because first and foremost, goals are achieved based on adherence. If you're not enjoying the process of what you're doing, and if it's not something that you can easily stick to, then you're going to fuck up. Let's be honest. It's not going to happen. So the most important thing for most people in a lot of ways is, yes, the calorie deficit is important, but how you actually achieve that in the sense of what you do with your diet on a daily basis or across the week, that's a really important factor as well.
I'd also put education into that fact as well. Like, do they actually know what macronutrients are? Like, that's another thing. There's so much talk about how to calculate your macros, etc., etc. the amount of people have no idea what they are, which is very, very common. And I think trainers kind of forget that because we obviously deal with them.
Yeah.
We know what they are, we know everything about them, etc., etc. Do they know what macronutrients are? Do they know what macronutrients they need? Do they know like the basics of like basic daily requirements? Like, are they even drinking enough water, stuff like that? That's something to start with. Again, alongside what you said about lifestyle. And they're actually not very hard to implement because they're very simple, but they go a long, long way.
Yeah, exactly that. And you know what? It is often a lot of time just as simple as just turning around to someone and saying, okay, I mean, for the most part, for a lot of like my sort of like beginner type clients, let's say, I just get them pretty much just tracking even as simply as just like protein and calories because
Yeah,
they're pretty much
very
they're pretty much that we need in a sense. Well, they're the two things that we need to focus on in a sense that's going to be important for body composition. Like if you can just get away and just say to someone, right, okay, so this is our calorie target, this is your protein target. If you can hit those two things a day, perfect.
Yeah.
But aside from that, those are two things obviously. But then I also look at like setting like separate targets or whatever. So 2 to 3 liters of water, let's say. A portion of like fruit or vegetables pretty much with every meal. You don't really have to get as specific in terms of like the exact amount of micronutrients and stuff. I think in a ballpark figure, as long as you're telling people, as long as you're kind of getting like a portion of fruit or veg in pretty much with every meal, and then obviously the basic health supplements on top of that, I think you're going to do a pretty good job of hitting like the necessary amount of like macros and stuff. And I think if you can implement all of that with someone and just give that to them on a daily basis, that's going to take them a hell of a long way. And they're obviously going to feel a lot better for it as well because, food quality is going to be improved. They're probably going to feel a lot better. They're going to train a lot better. They're going to recover a lot better. And that's just going to make the process a lot easier for them.
Yeah, no, completely agree. One thing you touched on there, very important, which is something that I've been stressing a lot lately is food quality again, especially in London here because it's so easy to get like fast food. I don't know what's like Nottingham, probably the centre might be fairly easy as well, but there's a deli or a Pret pretty much on every corner wherever you work, especially bang in the centre. So the convenience for bad quality, high calorie food is unreal. And sometimes it does come to learning how to prep your own meals, actually from nutrient dense ingredients, or actually learning to make those conscious decisions outside when you're actually making those lunch breaks.
Yeah.
Especially when you've, like I said, when you've got a very busy lifestyle and you haven't got as much time to prep or even as much time to eat. You consider like some people who do like 14-hour shifts of 10, 20-minute breaks, which does happen. It does make a big difference to go into that. So again, just going calorie fucking deficit, maybe not the best option. Or the structural option is better.
I think the number one thing most people just need to consider, like just to kind of cap this part off in the sense is, you've basically got to find a way of being able to attain, pretty much the boxes that you need to tick for nutrition. So, calories, protein, micronutrients, fiber, hydration. If you can tick all of those on a daily basis, then you're going to get to the goal that you want as fast as possible and as efficient as possible. But you've got to find a way that's going to pretty much suit your lifestyle to do it. And, just as you mentioned, everyone's got a different lifestyle. Some people just work a simple 9 to 5 with like 3 breaks and a lunch break and stuff. They'll be easier. Some people work 12 or 14-hour shifts. I have a client who's like a lorry driver, so he gets like 1 or 2 breaks a day.
Yeah,
I also work with a nurse. Again, she has the same problem. She only has like 1 or 2 breaks, and a lot of the time she probably won't even have them because she's so busy.
Yeah.
So you've really got to find a way of being able to tick all those boxes in and around your lifestyle. And I think once you get that balance, then you're going to make the process a lot easier. Because a lot of the time, the reason that people just aren't achieving their fat loss goals is because they can't adhere to what they're doing, because they haven't really thought about how they're going to actually work it in and around their lifestyle and stuff. So that's one of the biggest ones I feel is, just understanding how you're actually going to apply the process in and around your lifestyle. And if you can't take that into consideration, you're going to find it a really, really big struggle. And I often find that it's that implementation that is the biggest thing that I have to work on with each client for sure. But that kind of like covers that area in a sense. I think another area is going to be quite. This one's probably going to be one that's probably not really talked about as much, and I feel like mental health is probably a big one as well. And the reason I say that is because
psychology of dieting. So what are you doing? Stop it. I think one thing we just talked about before, our relationship with food. So one thing I think isn't done much, and it's very very touchy subject, is actually looking at a client's kind of emotional state, like how they, like what trigger foods they have, if there's any issues with binge eating or just issues with self confidence, body image, stuff like that. All that will come into dieting,
100%. 100%.
and all that will have to be factored in when it comes to say planning like a long term goal. Because as you understand, like yeah, as you progress through a dieting phase, like body changes, you end up being more hungry, your energy goes to shit, depending on how long you're dieting for. So planning those kind of like diet breaks, stuff like that, or even planning like those higher food days at the end of the week or something like that, any kind of those lifestyle factors makes a huge change. And also having a better relationship with the foods that you don't initially have with, so snacking is a big issue. So I think, again, it will completely depend on the client, but it's about monitoring those very little things that can have such a big detriment if they're poorly managed.
Yeah.
So, for example, what I tend to get people to do is, or what I suggest is, say if you're quite at a unstable position, maybe not that educated on food, and we're in that process of educating on food, educating on calories. The last thing you're going to do with a client is take essentially all their favorite foods out of the equation and give them the whole chicken, broccoli, chicken, broccoli, and rice diet. Um, so basically, we go forward. Obviously, we go through those healthy food substitutions, nutrient dense food, like we said, good portion of veg, and the quote unquote unhealthy foods or the less nutrient dense foods, keep them in. Just cap them by a certain percentage. Just say let's take 30% of whatever you usually have. So say if you have whatever 10 biscuits in the evening, have 7. Stuff like that, where there's still that kind of emotional satisfaction of eating those foods, but that caloric content is dropped down. So we do still adhere to that deficit, however great that may be, depending on what we're eating, but we still have that kind of enjoyment of food. The one thing I find a big issue with in fat loss is you get that kind of you develop a poor relationship with food, even if you've gone into it with a good one, because you become obsessing about your next meal. You become obsessed about what you can and can't have, and you look at food as like a numbers. Like tracking my fitness pal, again, I don't believe you should be doing that 365 days of a year. So stuff like that is very important to look at.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And you know what? It's good that you mentioned that as well, because I, again, like sort of on the mental health side of things as well, because I've probably gathered quite a bit of experience of this just with working with some of the clients that I've got at the moment. Some of them like sort of have like sort of anxiety disorders, some of them suffer with like depression and stuff like that. And it's undoubtedly like it's undoubtedly like a lot harder for people who do suffer, with actual mental health problems and stuff like that. And I feel like this is really, really hard for a lot of people to kind of understand. It's not really talked about as well. And, that's why I wanted to highlight it here in a sense, because, we obviously look at fitness in the sense of, it's good for obviously helping to improve your mental health. It's good for improving your a lot of stuff going off up top, which is going to affect the process and stuff. And I think an important thing to understand, like if you do have or if you do suffer with mental health problems, obviously there is no issue with that because we all know how common it is and stuff. You've really got to give yourself a break and understand that, you probably need a lot more time to be able to manage things. And, I've had to kind of stress that to a lot of the clients that I've worked with who do suffer with mental health issues. We've taken it a little bit slower. And, because obviously there's always going to be sort of times where, mental health is going to be pretty bad. It might not be the most ideal situation for you to be dieting in. So, in those occasions, I've had to give diet breaks or whatever just to make life a little bit easier for them and stuff. So I think a really important thing is, if you're attempting sort of a fat loss phase or whatever like that, and it's, it's going to be a pretty long journey and stuff. If you are suffering like with mental health problems at the moment, or if you're like kind of going through some like pretty bad problems and stuff like that, although the gym is going to be helpful and although the improvements to your physique is going to be great for improving your self-confidence and stuff like that, you've just got to understand that you probably need a little bit more time and stuff. You maybe don't really want to be dieting as aggressively. You don't want to create as much restriction on yourself because that's just going to create further problems that you don't really need. So yeah, I felt like that's a pretty important thing to kind of consider. And, having obviously a couple of clients who are going through some problems and stuff like that, I know firsthand, sort of like how hard it's been for them to kind of like progress through it and stuff like that. But even they will say, it's one of them things that if I didn't consider these things, if I just kept telling them, got to be more disciplined, got to cut your calories further and stuff, you've got to be on point more and stuff. If I was going to be like that, if anything, that's going to push them further away, and it's probably going to create more problems than it's going to solve. You've really got to understand the situation. You've got to understand your problems and work around them as best as you can, and just kind of work to what you can really manage. So,
yeah. I completely agree. I did a post about this, I think, about a month ago, saying it takes time to make time. It's not an easy. One thing you have to consider, especially when you look at people who easily lose weight with whatever structure plans. They probably had a good amount of experience going through fat loss phases. First time anyone does a fat loss phase, it's a fucking travesty. Like, it's never goes through, never goes smoothly as you expect. So that's always one thing to consider. This is why having some sort of structured plan is good, as opposed to going straight in with it and being oversimplified with dropping food left, right, and center just to create this deficit. Because again, obviously, as you said, we provide detriment to that long-term adherence. Factoring onto what you said about our mental health, like stress management and sleep tend to be very important topics to talk about lately, and rightly so. I think because there's a bit more research on it, a bit more awareness brought on it with some of the information that's coming there. So there's a lot more emphasis on like sleep tracking. So trying to get more quality sleep, trying to get 6 to 8 hours sleep at night, trying to get a good sleep routine. I know there are like certain supplements and like the blue light blockers, like they are definitely applicable. I think only once you've actually got a set sleep routine in, or a consistent sleep environment, then you can look into obviously looking at ashwagandha, blue light blockers, etc., etc. That's not really my topic to talk about. Combination of that and some sort of stress management outside of the gym, whether that is, I know some people like to do meditation, some people like to do it in the sports, some people like to go on like power walks, stuff like that, or listen to podcasts on XYZ. Having some sort of structured break from work, obligations, lifestyle, doesn't even need to be too much, like 20 minutes average, something like that, where you can do some deep breathing. If it's somewhere quiet or like non-stressful. London, it's fucking hard to do that. Really challenging. When we went back up north, actually, the weekend we trained with you, I think we slept into like 10:30 in both, because my dad lives on a very quiet road, middle of Manchester, in comparison to me living, right outside a massive street in Elephant Castle or in Camden Road. So the contrast with sleep quality between the two is absolutely ridiculous. So I think that does depend on your environment. Obviously, you can make the best of what you've got, but putting as much effort into those two aspects of your life, that'll help recovery, obviously, but it'll just help you progress through like a long-term fat loss phase so much better. Again, if you've got everything else structured, you'll find it will just move so much smoothly. And it's one thing you don't notice until it's shit. It's like with needing a deload in training, you don't know you need a deload until you do that. Like, there's 1 or 2 sessions where you're like, "Fuck, this is not going well," and then you're like, "This is the time." And you don't notice that kind of stress kind of hit you until like sleep starts to take a hit. So looking at those two, having some sort of pre-bed routine, whether that is not having a TV in the bedroom, turning the phone off, having a hot shower before you go to bed, making sure you sleep in a cool room with like warm clothing, stuff like that. Things which don't even take much time or cost much either, as far as I can tell.
And it's just the effort of it, really, isn't it? Like that's what it is. But because let's. I'll be straight up here and say this, obviously, because we just both work with like normal people who have everyday lives, everyday problems and stuff like that. Like it's not really an overstatement when we say this, but most people sleep like shit and are stressed to fuck. Like that's a genuine statement, and we know that from the people that we work with and stuff. So I was gonna say anyway, like sort of sleep and stress is probably the 2 biggest areas that I know I definitely have to work on with my clients, and I know you'll have to do the same. And I also know it's the same problem, like especially when we sort of live in a time where people are on like Netflix till like 3 a.m. binge watching episodes and stuff. Especially when people are going to like all night long raves at the weekend and stuff like that. Don't know who do that.
We've booked Endgame for the midnight screening on a Friday night, and we forgot it's 3 hours, and I was like, oh fuck.
That is really bad for circadian rhythm, sir. Hope you realise it.
I'll wear the blue light blockers because that'll clearly make a difference to going to bed 3 hours later.
It's also the same as having any caffeine after sort of 2 p.m.
Yeah.
That's really, really bad. But no, on a genuine point, we understand obviously like certain things in lifestyle will obviously get you to a point where you're probably going to have to be awake at a time that you're not meant to be awake and stuff like that. We're not going to turn around and tell you not to do those things because, quite frankly, that'd be fucking stupid. Like everyone needs to be going to see Endgame at midnight. Like, glad you reminded me of this because I need to go and book my tickets for that. But still, I will find a way. Don't you worry. But for the most part, a lot of people's sleeping routines are pretty bad. And I know a lot of the time that can't be helped for people who do like night shifts and different shifts and stuff like that. But overall, you should be looking to kind of keep the most consistent sleeping pattern as you possibly can. Going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time. And then, it's pretty much all about what you're doing sort of like before you go to bed as well. The pre-bed routines, which you spoke about, something that a lot of people don't have. A lot of people will literally just get home from work, they'll just chill or whatever like that, then they'll just sit on their phone pretty much right until they go to bed. And they don't realize that, obviously the use of social media with like blue light and stuff, and obviously protection against that is obviously going to keep the brain alert. It's going to prevent you from falling to sleep quicker and stuff like that. And like, I know we can obviously spend an entire podcast pretty much talking about sleep and stress, and we'll probably come on to that another time. But, those are pretty much the two biggest things. And, all we can really say in this situation is, if you can try and sort of prioritize your sleep as much as possible, because believe me, it's the most important aspect to pretty much everything to do in this game. So training performance definitely relies on your ability to get a good sleep, just recovery in general. Even stress management to a part is also, sort of like helped in a sense by your ability to sleep and stuff like that. But all we can really say on this matter is, if you can look to improve your sleep in whatever way possible, just by even simply just, keeping to the same sort of sleep schedule, making sure your room is really, really dark at night, making sure it's nice and cool, just as you mentioned. I would say to everyone pretty much to even just invest in some blue light blockers.
Yeah.
I don't really want to talk about the supplements and stuff like that because, again, that's very sort of specialist. There's probably just things that people need to fix in their routines first before they look into that. But even just simply buying a pair of blue light blockers, wearing them at night, using sort of like Flux on your laptop and like using Night Shift on your phone. That, and then obviously, just doing some like sort of some things to kind of chill out before you go to bed, whether it's like reading a book or meditating or whatever. Just doing those things every single day, those small little things, you're going to notice a huge difference in your ability to sleep. And do you know what? When your sleep gets on point, then you're going to find dieting a lot easier because you're going to wake up with more energy. You're going to wake up feeling more recovered. You're going to wake up with a lot less stress. And you're probably also going to find that hunger's not going to be that bad either as well. So definitely focus on your sleep. And then it's the same situation with stress management. Just simply doing one thing a day, completely away from like work or career or family, whatever, like just something for you that you enjoy. Just doing something as simple as that every single day will massively improve, just again, the way that you're able to sleep and stuff like that, and just the way that you're able to adhere to just life in general. Because we've all been in those situations before where we've probably like been insanely stressed and we've either missed meals and stuff, or we've gone for the easy option and probably gone over our calories for whatever reason. Like we've all been there before. So the better that you can handle your stress, the much easier time you're going to find it being able to lose body fat. It's as simple as that, really.
No, 100%. That would be kind of my final point. If you can manage all the following, what we talked about, fat loss will be not easy because dieting, whether it's a simple whether it's a simple plan or a very structured one, is not easy, unfortunately. Principle is, in a sense, calorie fucking deficit, but executing that's a hell of a lot different. So if you implement what we've talked about today to some extent, even if you nail it, like nail your sleep 80%, nail your stress 80%, prep 70% of your food, stuff like that, if you can get the vast majority of these factors improved, doesn't even need to be perfected. Rarely do I see anyone perfecting it. You will have everything which is much more efficient. And you'll notice that. It's one of those things. I said you'll notice how much of an improvement it is when you notice how shit it is when you don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know whether my message notification just came through then.
Possibly, yeah. Mine have been trying to That's what it's come on quick chat.
Still haven't been able to understand how to turn off notifications on my laptop yet. So the amount of times that I've been recording check-in videos recently, and you can just see texts from my mates just pop up in the corner. Sand. But no, yeah, just to kind of like follow on from that point really and just sum up this podcast in a sense, believe me, like the stuff that we've talked about today is probably stuff that you've not really considered before. And, just as you said, we're not looking for you to literally be on point with all this or be on it 100%. Because I'm going to be honest, you're never going to be on it 100%. No fat loss phase is ever going to be perfect. We've been there before, especially like, we're not perfect at all. We've been out like drinking and stuff like that during fat loss phases. We've been out. Don't make me look like the villain here. All right. We've been out at like music concerts and stuff like that at stupid times when we should have been sleeping and stuff like that during these phases. There have probably been occasions where stress has got pretty high and stuff, and we've maybe been a little bit slack in tracking our macros and stuff. So it's never ever going to be on point. But the more that you can just basically tick the boxes, in a sense, go through the right motions every single day, the faster you're going to be able to retain your results, and the better you're going to be able to keep them as well. So, literally everything that you've kind of listened to in this podcast tonight, like, if you just implement those things as best you can, or at least factor them in and like think about them and how they're going to affect you, you're going to find it a lot easier to lose body fat. There's no doubt about it.
More awareness, less winging it, basically.
That's exactly. You've summed that up perfect. You've actually summed that up perfect. We're actually able to bring this podcast to an end on the right note for once. This is a great start to round 4 of the podcast.
I don't even know if it's round 4. Fucking hell, we'll find out.
We'll find out. If we're back next week, well, actually, no, to be fair, this time next week I will have just got back from Amsterdam, so...
He'll be dead. So week after, probably.
I will, yeah. Basically, have to be the week after. It was probably a bad idea to start this podcast before I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm going to Amsterdam to DJ at a festival. I'm probably going to be drinking a lot, total honesty. If I make it back, it's going to be a miracle. There's no getting around it. So, but we'll see. If not, Josh is going to do the podcast on his own. So.
Oh, great. That'll be great.
Right, cool. We're going to end it there, then?
Yeah. See ya.